My grandparents had the story that we are from the lost tribes of Israel. And my grandmother, she died at 48 years old from breast cancer. And it was her dream to go to Israel. And so she told all of her children, you must go to Israel, you must go to Israel. She died when I was 6 years old, but I grew up with this message of like, you need to go to Israel, we must go to Israel. So when I went to university, I chose to study abroad in Israel. So all my friends went to like Europe and Asia, and they were like, why would you want to go to Israel? And I'm like, because this is the dream, you know? So when I went to Israel, when I landed, I just felt at home. And so that's where my story kind of starts. I just was like, whoa, this is home. And at this point in my life, I had traveled and I had been places, and like, you know, I love Italy, but it didn't never feel like home. So it was a weird feeling to land in a country and not see the country and just be on the plane and be like, oh, I'm home. And I studied at Haifa University for a summer, and then I just kept going back to Israel. And then I officially decided to like do a conversion process, which to me felt like my return back to my tribe.
The Jew saw them all, beat them all, and is now what he always was. All things are mortal but the Jew. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality?
Welcome everyone to the Jew Function. I'm very happy to have a very special edition, very unusual. So I'm going to kick off with a boring talk between me and Seth. We're actually jumping straight to our guest today, Ashira Solomon. I'm so happy to have you. How are you?
I'm well, and thank you so much for being so patient with me getting back to you, and I'm so happy to be here.
That's quite all right. We're also bungled things up, and Seth is driving to an office to join the call, so he'll be here soon. In case you're wondering, but we didn't want to miss an opportunity to talk to Ashira because she's such a interesting, fascinating character, and I feel like we need her voice in our circle. And now, just for anyone who's joining late to the Jew Function, and also, you know, for anyone who forgot, we're all about solving anti-Semitism. We don't care about the symptoms of anti-Semitism so much. We're aware of them. We're obviously extremely mindful of what's happening around the world. In the US, we saw the reaction after post October 7th, as a former guest said on the show, we were attacked on October 7th, and then we were attacked again. So we're painfully aware of that, but we've been talking about it since maybe 2011, 12, 13, and we're already sounding the alarm about what's coming. But interestingly, we did not talk about it just from the point of view of the rising incidents of hate crimes and actions aimed specifically at Jews. We're actually looking internally into the Jewish people in Israel and in the US, and we, based on our research, which is based on historic patterns, on words of Jewish sages, and on recent findings from network science, we sort of put together a very interesting picture, which essentially says when Jews are united, they're unbeatable. Not only they're unbeatable, they're inspiring the rest of the world to look up to them. When Jews fight between themselves, they provoke the opposite reaction from the world. And it goes as far as to say that every major calamity in Jewish history was always preceded by a great disunity among Jews. And we spent our first 22 episodes on this show studying it. We went chapter by chapter in our illustrious history. We're lucky to have a recorded history of the Jewish people, so it's easy to follow. And you see that a lot of the things that we learned in school were not exactly accurate, and that really a lot of the pain, we brought it on ourselves, by ourselves. It was our own doing. Yes, there was an external executioner waiting on the sideline to exact the right enough of pain on us to sort of change our ways, to reconsider. But it was always started by our attitude first. Now, we're not saying, oh, it's our fault, it's the victim's fault. It's not really what we're saying. What we're saying is we live in a closed system with rules, with laws. And the laws that we found to be true, the laws of nature, say that we need to provide that example within the network of human society. We need to be in the network, the hubs, the ones who sort of create all those connections, and we naturally do it. But we're doing it to feed the human ego, and instead what nature is demanding us to do is to feed a different kind of attitude, an altruistic attitude, if you will. So either we do it and the system thrives and grows and everybody cheers the Jews, or we fail to do it and then the system starts to pressure us. And we call that pressure anti-Semitism. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we're all about. And I like that Ashira is here because you are really passionate about building bridges and creating connection. Like you're an embodiment of the Jewish hub. That's what you are. Besides the fact that you are one of 9 siblings, which already is a small world network in and of itself. So, I
grew up knowing how to fight well and learn how to get along well with the people you fight with and the people you love.
Exactly, and I think that's really the key, right? Is to be able to fight, to get into those passionate arguments, but then at the end to say, you know what, that was what you said was really it really got to me. That was, but let's hug, right? Like the ability to do that, to find some higher.
We're still family. I always give this example because people from the outside on social media, obviously social media is just a highlight reel of people's lives. So people just say to me, wow, you come from such a big family. You guys look like this all-American family. You're always smiling and happy. And I'm so close to my siblings, which it's true. That's a fact. But they don't see the fighting. They don't see that my older brother and I, we have blowout fights, okay? Like really intense fights. And then in a month or so, we could go to France together, and we still love each other. I have blocked him on Instagram. I have blocked his phone number for like 3 weeks. And then, we come back around and we love each other. I go spend time with him in LA. He takes me out. He feeds me. So it's like this idea that unity looks like getting along all the time. I think people have to move away from that. I think when people think about unity, they think about agreement. And a lot of unity is not agreement. A lot of it is saying that because you are part of my tribe, because we're in the same nation as Jews, because we are family, I can disagree with you, but I still have this duty to love you and care for you and provide for you, take care of you, be there for you when you need me. It doesn't mean that I agree with you. And sometimes it doesn't even mean that I like you. So like, I remember I had a rabbi tell me, he said, listen, Ashira, you have to be in community, but it doesn't mean you have to like the community. Like the Torah doesn't hold you and say you must like who you're in community with, right? And so I think people need to like understand the difference between liking and unconditional love. It would be nice if I liked everyone in the Jewish community, but the truth is I don't. But I do love, I do see that you're my brother, you're my sister, and I have a duty to you as a fellow Jew. But that doesn't mean I want to hang out with you all the time.
That's so beautifully said. And it's so, we spend an entire season trying to explain to people what you just said in 2 minutes. And maybe that's the charm of the next generation. You're getting.
No, you're just someone who has like 9 siblings, so that's why.
maybe, but I'm curious. I want to kind of take a step back because you are doing. You've done a lot. You're pretty young, but you've done a lot. You're doing a lot. You've had a bunch of podcasts, and you're involved in the. You're on that bridge between the U.S. and Israel. But I want to kind of take a step back. Growing up, you grew up on the West Coast, right?
Yes.
Did you experience anti-Semitism before the 7th? Like, was that part of your world at all?
No. So one, I did a gior, so I converted in the last few years, and so growing up, I didn't experience anti-Semitism, and I wouldn't even say people. So for one, I'm from a very small town in California. My great-grandparents were the first Black people to live in the city that I'm from. And so they came from the South and they were escaping Jim Crow, and they had 12 children. And then those children and had me. So I grew up as the only Black girl in my entire school, the only Black family for like a couple generations in the entire city. And so people always say, like, did you grow up with racism? And did you grow up, feeling like you were less than, et cetera? And, I tell people it wasn't until I went to university that I was taught that life will be harder for me because I'm Black, or university be harder for me because I'm Black. Opportunities will be harder for me because I'm Black. I wasn't taught these messages. Yes, I experienced certain things in school from, white children, like with touching my hair because it was curly and different things like that. And my mother would probably say her growing up in like this cowboy town, she experienced more racism. But she said something to me that was very interesting. She said, at the end of the day, people just started to get along because they realized we're neighbors. We live together. You start babysitting their children. You know what I mean? You start working alongside others. And so being with people and them being your neighbors, it trumps all of like hate and racism, because then now you're starting to get to know people. So yeah, my story doesn't start with anti-Semitism, and I wouldn't even say it starts with racism either.
But how did it start with Judaism? In fact, like what? maybe
You want to start there? Okay, so my grandparents had the story that we are from the lost tribes of Israel, and my grandmother, she died at 48 years old from breast cancer. And it was her dream to go to Israel. And so she told all of her children, you must go to Israel. You must go to Israel. I died. She died when I was 6. God forbid, I don't want to die. But, well, not now. She died when I was 6 years old. But I grew up with this message of like, you need to go to Israel. We must go to Israel. So when I went to university, I chose to study abroad in Israel. So all my friends went to like Europe and Asia, and they were like, why would you want to go to Israel? And I'm like, because this is the dream, So when I went to Israel, when I landed, I just felt at home. And so that's where my story kind of starts. I just was like, whoa, this is home. And at this point in my life, I had traveled and I had been places, and like, I love Italy, but it didn't never feel like home. So it was a weird feeling to land in a country and not see the country and just be on the plane and be like, oh, I'm home. And I studied at Haifa University for a summer, and then I just kept going back to Israel. And then I officially decided to like do a conversion process, which to me felt like my return back to my tribe.
Did your grandparents talk about when they talked about lost tribe? Did they have any details?
No, they didn't have details, but like they all had like Hebrew names. Like everyone had a Hebrew name, and there was like, this Hebrew last names and things like that. And they were like, where does this come from? And I think too, just at least with the Black American story, even dating back to early 1800s and 1700s, right? Black people always had like this historical narrative attached to the Israelites, right? And the story of the struggle and the 400 years of slavery. And we have like all of this history, even dating back to Harlem, where, there were Black people who didn't practice Christianity and they were practicing Judaism. And, so it's always like permeated in the culture.
It's fascinating because when I was in New York for many years, way back when we even before we started this podcast, I was just like, I moved from Israel and I saw this, new cultures, and Israel is pretty diverse, but still, everybody's Jewish, right? But then in New York, you suddenly start to see other people, and they see you as another person, and suddenly they start to point your Jewishness to you, which was a new experience. And a friend of mine was studying at a city college uptown, Washington Heights, in the Department of Jewish Studies, but he was the only Jew in class. Everybody else was like Blacks from the ghetto and Indians and Haitians and all kinds of like a mixed hodgepodge of nationalities, but he was the only Jew. And so we're like, let's make a documentary about this and talk to these people, ask them why they care so much about Jewish history and Jewish studies. And everybody came at it from a perspective like, oh, they were slaves, we were slaves, interesting. They were a minority, I was a minority, interesting. Everybody said, the priest in my church always said they killed Jesus. Like, I want to meet the guys who supposedly killed Jesus. So it was interesting that this thing is always either people are really attracted to it, or you have the guys who are like, no, we're the true Jews and they are trash Jews and
Yeah.
So-
Well, those people that you're talking about, which is not my family story, are like the Hebrew Israelite group in New York, who's always like
Right.
shouting Jews and stuff. So that group, that's not the group like my family came from or associated with it, or at all. But just like there's so much history, like people don't know that some of the first Jews, which were Mizrahi Jews, came to Mississippi. And my family is all from, most of my family is from Mississippi. And they don't know that there were synagogues built there and they were teared down and churches were built there. And they don't know that Jews were mixing with blacks at that time. And so, and that history just completely gone, you know, like no one talks about like those first Syrians coming over into Mississippi or anything like that. So there's a lot of mixing that happened in the South, I would say.
There's so much mixing that happened with all the Jewish people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what's going on in Africa and what we'll discover. We lost 10 tribes, so there's got to be millions of Jews out there.
Yeah.
I read one book. I don't know if it was Simon Wiesenthal wrote it, but he goes through the whole Columbus situation when Columbus came over and all the Jewish ties around Columbus. And then I bought another book just because it's stuff really fascinates me about Japan and this whole Jewish, Japanese.
The Isa tribe.
I guess I don't remember. I didn't read that
Isa,
book
which
yet.
means to carry. They believe they're descendants of the people who used to carry the Ark of the Covenant.
Wow.
Yeah, and I also found that so those are the two books. I finished the Columbus one. I didn't start the Japan one, but I also have heard of in China. I saw something recently. The Jerusalem Post published something that Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia comes from some Jewish. I hope we don't find out that ISIS is Jews, but Africa probably are.
That would really destroy our PR even more. It's like, wait, welcome back home, but wait.
But in Africa, certainly there's got to be all kinds of hidden Jews there.
Yeah.
I want to, because of our time, I want to be mindful of our time, and I apologize to our viewers because this is going to be a really fun talk. We're probably going to have you over again, Shira, when you have, right? We owe you the full hour, and so we'd like to, give you the right service here.
Come back. I love the vibe already.
Good. I'm curious. So it's one thing to realize, okay, maybe you have some Jewish roots. Grandma said this and that. You go to Israel, boom, you have this feeling of home. Can't argue with that. We're feeling creatures first and foremost. It's all very clear. But then you went back and you sort of like made it part of your kind of life's mission. You're building bridges. You have the Black and Jewish podcast. You have these conversations with high stakes people. You try to bring people together, create coalitions. Like, what's that about? Is this something that started before? I imagine it started before.
Sounds very Jewish.
Yes, sounds very Jewish. Yeah.
It's not very Jewish, you said?
Yeah.
I said it sounds very Jewish of you.
Yeah, it's true. So what's that about? Like, is it an inner calling? I imagine it started before the 7th, right? So.
Okay, so
give us a little bit of like what motivates you? Why do you get up in the morning? Kind of speech.
So my background is I have a master's in public administration. And so I did tons of fellowships with like the Senate of California and in Congress. And I worked for Ileana Ros-Layton, who was, she's actually a Cuban Jew, but she practices Christianity and she represents like the Miami district. Her last, I think her last time in office was 2018. And I was there with her and she was very pro-Israel. And so as I was working and trying to figure out, do I want to run for office? Do I want to be a diplomat? Do I want to work for a think tank? All of these things, I always knew I wanted to work with something that has to do with the US and Israel. I shouldn't say always. After I went to Israel and came back in 2016, I knew that I wanted to do some type of work with the US and Israel. I just didn't know what it would look like. I do like to always tell people that, the hand of God is really on my life because I really have no plans. Like, I never knew I was going to start Black and Jewish. I never had a dream that I was going to be in media. Like, I haven't been dreaming about this since I was 5 years old or something like this. It just happens that typically I say yes to something very small in my life. Like, yes, I want to go study, at the seminary in Israel and move to Jerusalem. And then something totally big opens up where then it's like, now I'm in media, working with and doing Black and Jewish, So um, Black and Jewish the podcast started because of October 7th. So prior to October 7th, I was a political moderator and I was moderating on political panels for women organizations. I met Fleur Hassan. I have to give her so many thanks because she launched me into media. So I met Fleur Hassan and the previous deputy mayor of Jerusalem, Fleur Hassan Nahum. And I reached out to her because I said, hey, do you want to take a delegation of Israeli women to these political conferences? Because there are no Israeli women represented at these conferences. And I would see all these women from the Middle East, but no Jewish women. So she said, yeah, let's do it. So we were working on that prior to October 7th. And then maybe a couple weeks, that was probably like September, and a couple weeks into September, she calls me and she's like, hey, I'm starting a show called The Quad, and it's going to be like the Israeli View. I want it to be like the Israeli View, like 4 Jewish women, and we're conservative. Some of us are right wing, some of us are right center, and we're just having at it, like The View, but in Israel. So I said, okay. And she said,
in English?
In English. It's in English. And so she said, you're going to be the 4th co-host. The producers have looked at you. I like you. And at this point, I've only met Fleur once for coffee. Okay.
Right.
So I just said, yes. Like, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. She just like, you're going to be on this show. And I yelled out, yes. So I can't say it was like this deep desire and dream for me to want to be on a talk show because I never thought about it. So, then October 7th happened. So the show was initially supposed to launch in November. Fleur calls me maybe 2 days after October 7th, I want to say. She says, we're launching the show this week. We have to get in front of what's happening in the media. We have to fight. We have to do hasbara. We have to do PR because the international community, as you know, on October 7th, they were all on Israel's side. And by like 2 days later, they were already denying the rapes, denying all the things. So we launched that same, like maybe 2 or 3 days after October 7th. We got in the studio with Emily Schrader, who's a journalist in Israel as well, and Vivian Perkovich, who is the previous Canadian ambassador to Israel. And it was the 4 of us, and we just got in and we started shooting what is called The Quad. So I really encourage everyone to go subscribe and watch The Quad. It's an amazing talk show explaining geopolitics, what's happening on the ground in Israel, and really explaining like the Middle East to the international community and English audiences, but it's filmed in Jerusalem. So I was on that show and I was completely new, and I started to really see, and I wasn't on social media prior to this, right? So Fleur's like, you got to get on social media. Like, Fleur, I am where I am because of Fleur Hassan. She just pushed me. And so
maybe we're going to talk to this Fleur Hassan woman. She sounds
yeah, you gotta get Fleur on the show as well.
You'll get Fleur on the show.
Okay, I will. I'll connect you guys to Fleur. So I started to see BLM come out, which I've never supported BLM anyways, but I started to see them come out with the parachutes and Free Palestine and this narrative to connect Black Americans to Palestinians and try to tie our narratives together. And I'm sitting in Israel as a Jew looking at this like, wait, what? The Black American narrative has nothing to do with the Palestinian narrative. So I got very passionate about that specifically. So I started doing content around that. And then last summer, I was in Miami and a friend of mine was like, you need to launch Black and Jewish. And we were just sitting and talking. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, there's so many people who, 1, have never met an Orthodox Jew, and 2, they don't know much about the Jewish community, like how insular you guys are. They don't know how it operates. And I think you would do a lot of good since you sit at the intersection of these two people groups, you know? And I really thought about it and I said, yeah, I want to bridge the communities together. And then also, because I have this political background, I also wanted to talk about specific issues regarding the communities individually. So sometimes on the podcast, I'm talking to people, either Black people or Jewish people, and when we're discussing how can we make our community stronger, what happened from civil rights time to now that there's a breakdown. And then other times, I'm specifically talking to Jewish people about what's going on with Israel, what's going on with our own communities, and then talking to Black people and saying what's going on with America.
Who are the people who can hear your message? And there's the people who just agree with you right away.
Yeah.
There's the people who just won't agree with you, just no matter what. Who are the people who can hear something and are like, they have the quality that they can, their mind can be changed. Yeah, they can change their minds can be changed. They're willing to be to open to hearing something, to understanding something they didn't understand before.
Well, the advantage that I have, and I do leverage it, is that I am Black and I speak to Black people who are culturally relevant, meaning like they have some ties to the Black community where Black people already kind of trust them and like they believe in what their messaging is and they have a good rapport with Black people. And so because I'm speaking to people like Mike Rashid King, who's from the Nation of Islam, whom I do not agree with, who loves Farrakhan. However, he has holds and a presence in the Black community that people trust. So me, as a person who's willing to sit down with someone like him, they become more open to what I'm saying, you know. Or if I
hold on, I want to ask about that, and I'm sorry, like jumping on your words. I feel like you're slipping away between our fingers. No, because these are all important things. Do you feel that someone like him, who's already somewhat positioned, as you said, in a position of influence and power within a certain community, do you feel he's actually open to changing his mind? Because people look up to him and they looked up to him for certain qualities, certain things he said, he supports, he endorses, and now he's sitting with you. Do you feel there's a genuine desire to like open up and say, maybe I got this wrong, or maybe this, or maybe I'm right about this, but it should be like, is there?
Yes, because I'm building a relationship. So you have to understand that some people in the Black community, they already have a perception of what a Jew is, and especially not Israel, but what a Jew is in America, right? What they deem as Ashkenazi, Zionist, European Jews.
The landlord. You can say that, yeah.
So they already have this perspective. So when I'm coming in and they're speaking to me, I kind of like shake their paradigm in a way, right? And so they're already more receptive. And so me being a spokesperson for the Jewish people, because of how I look, my race, I mean, I do leverage that. I leverage being Black, right? They're more receptive when I say, hey, that's actually not true. That's not what Jews believe. We believe X, Y, Z. Or I say, you actually got that wrong. That's not how the community operates. What you see as them being anti-others is just them being insular. And the reason why they're insular is because ABC. And I start explaining to them like who the Jews are and who we really are and what our beliefs really are. They are more receptive to me because I am also one of them.
So let me ask you the question again. Who are the people? What are the qualities of people? Where are those people who are willing to hear something and have and at least be open? Right. You have people who definitely agree with you already. So that's great. And you have people who it's going to take another 3 generations until like their mind softens to even listen to you or listen to us. Right. But who are the people who are ripe now who are open to hear something?
The people that I find that I've interviewed on my show who are open to hearing me are people who are highly intelligent people. I would say that's their number one quality. And to, I don't want to necessarily say they're open-minded is their quality, but
heavy-hearted.
So are you appealing to their intellect or to their heart when you find people who are willing to change, who are able to change?
the people that I've been talking to on my show, I'm appealing to their intellect more than their heart.
Interesting.
So they just didn't know facts. Is that what it was? They just didn't. They thought every Jew is racist, or they thought. I mean, that's what it is. They just didn't know facts.
It's the intelligence and it's the intellect, because there are myths. There are so many myths around who the Jewish people are, and when you only interact with Jews from Brooklyn, and then you say that's the entire Jewish community, you're missing out on so many things. You know what I mean? And so I have found that trying to appeal to people's hearts and feelings don't work for me personally. Trying to make the moral argument for Israel actually doesn't work.
Even though
support Israel because we are more moral, or look what we did. We sent people to Turkey and we helped this country and that. Like, that doesn't work because, I don't know, they already think we're immoral. You know what I mean? Like,
it's interesting because
they don't breathe us.
but no, it's I get it, but it's interesting because for you, when you got on the plane to Israel, you felt at home. Nobody had to rationalize it to you or intellectualize it to you, right? And yet here you are finding yourself in a position of having to first explain things and set things in order and kind of mentally build a new picture. And then maybe that will awaken a more emotional picture below that.
Yes, because people are fed misinformation and or from their experience. So something they may have felt, now they have interpreted misinformation coupled with whatever they experienced a Jew to be, you know?
Yes.
So I found that it's what.
Okay, so can people listen to the Black and Jewish podcast?
Yes, you can listen to it wherever you listen to your podcast and on YouTube.
Okay, so we have the Quad, we have the Black and Jewish. Good. Any other major Netflix series you're on that we need to promote? No, before you answer that. The question is, I want to turn our, sites inwards right now, internally, okay, among Jews. As we started the show, and I'm going to drop a big bomb here, which we're not going to be able to diffuse before the end, but it's good. Today we're recording this. It's the eve of the Holocaust Memorial Day, not the international one, the one that we commemorate in Israel. And so tonight there are all the ceremonies. Tomorrow it's a whole day. Growing up here in Israel, at least you grow up, in school, since like fourth grade, you see all these movies with these emaciated bodies of Jews in the ghettos and in the concentration camps. Really traumatic for a kid, but you remember it. What they don't tell you is all the stuff that kind of preceded it. Like, what were the conditions that allowed for this to happen? And Seth and I on our show, we see, and this is something that is not a very popular thing to talk about. We're like basically Jews in Europe are on the brink of civil war. If they had the ability to, they would fight each other, with weapons. They just didn't have the ability because they were like living separate communities. You have Orthodox Jews one place, you have assimilationists in another place, socialist Zionists in another place, but they were at each other's necks. Really, the animosity, the terrible things. Like, a really terrible example to the world. And on the heels of that, or I guess the backdrop of that, that's when the Holocaust sort of explodes. I want to ask, and the feeling that I'm getting, me and Seth, is like every year we commemorate the Holocaust. Oh, it was terrible. It was such a traumatic event. And here the 7th, also traumatic. We call it the Holocaust for Israel, right? But all those events are always preceded by terrible infighting. Israel was also on the brink of civil war, October 6th. We rarely talk about it, at large. What do we do about this, Ashira? How do we take some of that amazing qualities you described at the beginning of the show? How do we bring that sense of family back to make that the most important thing to take care of first before everything else?
I may not like you right now, but I love you. I'm going to. I might not be able to talk to you on the phone right now, but I will. We will. The love has to be more important than anything that separates us.
Yes. What wise advice can you give Jews on this?
It's so difficult, but one thing that I do love that is part of our tradition before Yom Kippur is that we go around and we ask people for forgiveness. And we say, I don't know if I offended you this year, but will you forgive me? And I think this idea that humbling yourself and just saying and asking people for forgiveness and saying, I don't know if I offended you, but if I did, I just want us to create peace. I really like that we do that. And I think more Jews should definitely drive that in. But in terms of I was watching the election, right? And I'm conservative and I voted for Trump and I have all types of opinions about American Jews and Reform Judaism and what it's doing to our politics and our people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And I seen everyone blow up online. Jews just divide online. We've been together all year fighting, and then we divided online because some Jews wanted to vote for Harris, some Jews wanted to vote for Trump, and they were like, how could you vote for Harris and not Trump? And how could you not think of Israel? And we were at each other's throats again. And so people were having a very hard time with unity once again, right? And so I think that that type of disagreement and that type of debate is healthy, but I think we have to say, I can push away your idea, but I don't have to push away you. And so I think every Jew has to first start with themselves as well. Really sit down and think to yourself, who am I? And what do I want to contribute to Am Yisrael? And how do I want to make my nation better? How do I want to make my people better? Because as you guys said earlier, which I agree with your whole entire premise and thesis, is that when we are unified, it doesn't matter who the executioner is, right? When we're strong, it doesn't matter the attack, we always win. And then when we're weak, we always break down. And so I think people really have to humble themselves. They really need to humble themselves before God, have humility, and just say, listen, I disagree with your ideas. I reject your ideas even. But you as a person, you're my brother, you're my sister, and I have a duty to you. And maybe if people focus on their duty to Am Yisrael, their duty to their fellow Jew, perhaps that can get us over the hump of our disagreements. If maybe you could just focus on our duty, because we have duties to one another. I have a responsibility to you, you have a responsibility to me. And so I think focusing on duty and responsibility could be the first way that we get over the fact that we disagree a lot. And so much so, we could even hate each other's ideas, but it doesn't mean I have to hate you.
Let me ask one small piece. I know we're near the end here. You said duty and responsibility, right? Mm-hmm. So if I really respect someone or respect some concept, so I'm willing to stay up late, I'm willing to carry the heavy bag, I'm willing to do all that if I believe in the goal. But if you come to somebody and talk about duty and responsibility, what is the shared goal that will give the people the power to be able to do that? Because right, something burns in you very strong, which gives you the power to be able to do that.
Right. Well, I think that every Jew has the shared goal of stopping anti-Semitism and wanting to make sure their communities are protected and wanting to make sure that, Jews aren't experiencing hate around the world. I can see that after October 7th, we've seen Jews rally together. It didn't matter if they were on the left or the right. I was in Israel at the time. Before I lived next to Bet Tennessee, right? So every night, Motzei Shabbat, they were protesting every night. Every Motzei Shabbat, they were protesting right outside my door. But after October 7th, I seen with my own eyes Jews come together who were not normally coming together. I seen every Shabbat people saying Shabbat Shalom to me when people on the street were just passing each other on Shabbat, not speaking to each other. So we have the ability to do it. The problem is we only do it when there's a hard time, right? Hard times is what
we always talk about that.
Come together, right? So how can we keep that same energy throughout the next year or 2 years or 3 years? And
without
without having to go through something so terrible to remind us. So how can we keep that memory so we can say, and I think it could be duty and responsibility. And the shared goal is just that we want to keep Am Yisrael one. We don't want anti-Semitism. We don't want people exploiting our pain. We don't want people using us, abusing us, all of these things that happened after October 7th. We want to stay together. We don't want to have this hate of can I eat at your house? You're not kosher enough. You're not this enough. You're not that enough. That infusion of hate within each other, and I'm talking from an Orthodox perspective, right? Because I see it from the Orthodox community with Reform and with conservative and who's keeping what and who's keeping what, So this is my lens of how I'm speaking. And who's your father's Jewish, your mother's not Jewish, all of these conversations, which halakhically, I understand there's a halakhic stance for this, but just for a moment, inviting someone into your house to have tea, to talk to them as a person, to love on them, to make sure, are you looking for a marriage partner? Do you need to get married? Do your children need something? Are you lacking in money? Because these are the real things that we as the Jewish people are going through. And people always say oh, the Jews are part of the Illuminati. The Jews are No, what makes the Jews strong is that we care for one another, that we take care of each other. And so making sure that your fellow Jews' needs are met, I think is the most important before we start looking at all the things that divide us, that you drive on Shabbat and I don't, but it's Seth, I don't know if you have kids, but are your kids good? I'm worried about your kids. I'm worried about you as a person more than just, you hitting these halakhic things, right? And again, I'm talking from this lens because this is the company I keep. So yeah, I think just care about your fellow Jews' needs and help meet their needs. And I think that will create unity more than what they think about, more than who they vote for, etc. Now, I have very strong opinions on who I think the Jewish people should be voting for. I really do.
We'll talk about that.
Stay tuned for our next podcast.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in the next show.
Off. So I say this because I have to work through this, because I think are you an effing idiot? I have those thoughts a lot.
We all do.
And then I think to myself, when I hear someone's story, when I'm talking to a personal person and I hear about their personal issues, I'm in the grand scheme of things, this is still a person who's hurting at night, who can't sleep at night, who's worried about their children at school, worried about finances. We all having the same worry and anxiety and stress. And so does it really help that I sit there and call them an idiot over and over for who they voted for? Or will it help that will I have more influence and maybe can persuade them if I'm focusing on their needs as a person?
Ashira, we could sit here listening to you for hours, and we'll do it on our next episode with Ashira, I promise.
I have 5 more minutes if you guys have more questions.
Well, we have a lot more questions, but but actually, I also have to go because I also have another thing happening. Okay. Look, I put a quote in the chat. We always ask people to read a quote from us, from our sages. This is from A9. If you could read it for us, that'd be great. And we can.
Indeed, when all the disputes are elevated to the root of the source, to the world of unity, unity is formed over the names of the people of Israel. That's beautiful.
Indeed.
I wanted to add one thing, Seth, that you were trying to get me to really answer earlier about who are these people in the middle. And I said they're intelligent. But the other quality that I see of the people that would be open to my message, to the Jewish people and learning more, are people who are very active. So they're active in their own communities and they're already solving problems. So maybe they're businessmen solving problems, or they are activists, social activists. These people who are just talking behind a mic and they don't do anything in their actual communities, those people are harder persuade, but the people who are actually working with people who are active and they're giving back to their communities, that has been a common quality of the people that I have interviewed. They're doing they're intelligent and they're active in serving others. And those people are those people who have those qualities.
Those people are ripe to hear something new,
yes,
to let something take root.
Yes, those two.
Okay, so we're gonna, with your help, invite a few of those people to the show, and also Fleur Hassan, and anyone else listening. Please go check out the Quad and Black and Jewish, because I'm gonna go listen right now, because I just want to hear more of this.
Such good energy, Ashira.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Thank you so much for having me.
So beautiful.
Thank you, and I love all the guys' questions. And hopefully we can meet in person at some point.
Yes, I'm in Israel, so as soon as you get here, we'll talk. And then if not before this or after this, we'll have another episode. But this is the Jew Function, everyone. This is where you meet amazing people first and foremost, and along the way we also solve anti-Semitism. So please follow, like, subscribe, share, comment, all the good stuff, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you, Ashira, Seth.
Thanks.
Be well, everyone.